don't have a lot of good other than Fred Higgins and golf. I don't have the Jeff Law, the bat player. Jeff would pull him. What was the next one?
It's early still.
Hey, Norm, did you I like the photo you put on with the evidence, by the way. I'm going to say something to him. I'm sorry.
Nice and warm in here, right? No air moving through.
That's why I'm short.
Mr. DA, they give us a lot of room, please. Use for paper. Can I move any of these at all? Just a little bit?
Sure, yeah. Just don't knock them over.
Chiefs, you guys have, we all got to get up here, so don't.
You can smell that. I mean, I don't know what it is. I mean, I don't know. What's that smell?
Now that you know, they'll report it.
That's how we try it, right?
That was a while, yeah.
How's this going to work? Does it work all right for everybody?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody, for coming out this afternoon. I think clearly what we want to do is give you a clear message to what law enforcement in Livingston County has been up to. This morning, we had approximately 40 law enforcement members from throughout the county, including local, state, and federal members of law enforcement. We're briefed by Investigator Jeff Weidrich on some long-standing narcotics investigations that have been going on throughout the county. As a result of that investigation and the work that was put forward this morning, you have 19 people that were arrested and incarcerated. There's a 20th individual that we have a warrant out for, who we're hoping to pick up. And then 21 and 22, we have an individual that sits in the state prison that there's a warrant that we will execute when he's released from state prison, and one individual that was picked up just prior to today's investigation. Livingston County has always taken a strong stance on drugs. What we've done, as you see behind us, is the Livingston County Drug Task Force. Clearly, every member in law enforcement in Livingston County, with the state agencies and our federal partners, and our district attorney, Greg McCaffrey, have made it very clear that we need to work together to do this. Our resources become less and less, so we need to work more and more. And we've formalized the Drug Task Force this year. Under Jeff Weidrich's leadership, this is a clear example of the success that we've had. I'm going to let Greg McCaffrey speak to where this investigation is going, and the stance, as you look on the news release today, the bail that the courts have placed clearly says narcotics trafficking in Livingston County is going to be held accountable. And I think the message that we all put out there each and every day, no matter what level of sale, it affects our community, whether it's larcenies, burglaries. Livingston County's been in the news all too much this past week. We had a home invasion earlier in the week that our officers were able to bring to a successful conclusion. Those are all related to narcotic situations. So we want to make sure that we continue to take that strong stance. So Greg McCaffrey's going to speak, and then we'll open it up to anybody else who wishes to speak.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just to echo some of the comments that the undersheriff just made, this morning at approximately 5 a.m., this room was filled with around 40 members of the local law enforcement community. It was a planned, what we call a spring roundup here in the county. It culminated about 6 or 8 months of hard work on behalf of law enforcement in this community. Law enforcement was gathered, went out with a mission, and essentially that mission was to arrest some of the most serious drug offenders in our community. Today, the results ended with 19 arrests in total, as the undersheriff said. In total, there's going to be 22 people rounded up as a result of the events of earlier this morning and the recent work of local law enforcement as well as our Livingston County grand jury. In total, the roundup netted a Class A2 drug felony, which is the most serious charge we can get in the drug level, and it will be a huge case here in Livingston County. Essentially, we took off a very notorious drug dealer with this A2 felony. The charges also included numerous Class B drug felonies, which could lead to state prison sentences in the range of 9 years. We also had numerous Class C, D, and E felonies, as well as misdemeanor sales and unlawful possession of marijuana charges. I think that the best thing I can say about this effort of all the law enforcement is that it doesn't just reach here in Geneseo, but in fact this was countywide. We reached Caledonia, Avon, Nunde, Lima, throughout the entire county looking for drug dealers, and this is just the beginning of what we hope to do as a Livingston County Drug Task Force. I can truly say that today is a great day for law enforcement in this county, a great day for the District Attorney's Office, and I think most importantly, a great day for the Livingston County community. After several months of investigations, controlled and undercover purchases, and cooperation among all the local law enforcement agencies, the Livingston County Drug Task Force was very successful in their first roundup. We apprehended and arrested some of the county's worst drug offenders. I would like to personally thank and acknowledge all of the fellow members of the Livingston County Drug Task Force for all their hard work, sleepless nights, and most importantly, for putting their life on the line every day to serve our community. I'd like to extend a special thanks to Sheriff York and to Undersheriff Sesniak for their dying dedication to fighting drugs here in this county. I'd also like to thank Chief Chapman from Caledonia, Chief Noble from the village of Avon, Chief McNamee of Mount Morris, Chief Osganian from Geneseo, Chief Wilcox of Nunde, Chief Perkins of Dansville, and Major Page of the New York State Park Police. I'd also like to extend a special thanks to the members of all of their respective departments, for they are truly the ones who went out and did real hard work behind all these arrests today. I'd also like to thank the New York State Police for their cooperation in this endeavor, the DEA, and all other law enforcement for all their hard work and dedication to this community and for risking their life every day to protect us all. I'd also like to thank my staff at the DA's office for their ginormous effort the last few weeks in putting together this roundup. The ball is now in the District Attorney's Office court. We intend to vigorously prosecute and put away these drug offenders and seek very harsh sentences to not only send a message to this community, but also to help clean up our streets. Next week will actually mark my 1-year anniversary as Livingston County District Attorney. And if there's one thing I noticed in my first year in this job is that drugs are ruining our community. I've had a front row seat, as has every assistant in my office, to seeing exactly what drugs do. Very few cases come into the District Attorney's Office where drugs don't play a role, whether it's the constant burglaries we see in this county, all the various thefts that we have, domestic violence related issues, are essentially all crimes that we can attribute the bad judgment to the use and abuse of drugs. Drugs are affecting our schools and the teenagers in this county, and I think as we go through prosecuting these cases, you'll see that many of the offenders that were apprehended are actually late teens, early 20s, which means they're recently out of our local high schools. I know personally, I grew up 5 minutes from here, went to school 5 minutes from here, and I was naive as to the drugs in this community. But I can tell you that drugs are in our community, and with the help of all local law enforcement, and specifically the Livingston County Drug Task Force, we are going to take a strong, hard line, and we are going to look for these offenders. We're going to punish them, and we're going to seek jail sentences for all of them. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope this afternoon is just the tip of the iceberg for what the Livingston County Drug Task Force will do. All of these gentlemen standing behind me, as well as their agencies, are the ones who get all the credit for this. They've been aggressive, and they've been thorough, and hopefully, as a result of today's efforts, we get widespread community support, and that people will report when they believe drugs are being sold and used in their community. Because if you have drugs in your community, it's our goal to find them, and then my office's job to make sure they're prosecuted. I don't know if any of my fellow chiefs or law enforcement have any comments to make at this point. Otherwise, if there's any questions, we'll try to answer those. As the undersheriff said, there is going to be a release given out, which is going to have much of the specific information from this morning.
Can you at least tell us about this notorious drug dealer, the A2 felony? I mean, who is this person? What was the scenario regarding them?
Yes, there was a Thomas Ripley arrested several weeks ago for drug sales in the village of Lima as well as into the town of Avon. He does have an attorney representing him, and he will be appearing in county court at a future date.
But what was he essentially, what is he accused of doing? Was he a dealer? Did he
he
supply people? Did he?
You know, without going into specifics, the allegations against him is that he was distributing cocaine.
Can you talk about, in court today, that there was one gentleman in particular that you called kind of a major dealer, another woman you said, you know, the bail is set at $40,000 because she had a lot of stuff at the house. Can you go into more about kind of that and then some of the stuff on the table, like the controlled substances you're finding?
Well, I think a lot of your specific questions from what happened in court this morning will be dealt with through the handout we gave out. What you actually see in front of us, I think the undersheriff or someone from the sheriff's office is probably better versed to speak to, but if you take a close look or if you smell the odor of the room, there's a significant quantity of marijuana. There is some cocaine. There's some buy money you see. There's also some heroin and pills. In terms of, I believe you're referring to Mr. Trzanski, you know, we're going to explore our charges against each and every one that we have today, and if additional charges are warranted, we'll move on those.
Like, quantity of the cocaine, like how much are we talking about? I see little bags, or like, can you give us an idea?
I feel much more comfortable with one of the law enforcement officers talking about that. Again, you know, I think the indictments today, you know, talk about the weight, but, I mean, again, if you want to come up and take a look and obviously not touch.
How many of the 20 people are actually connected to each other? Is this an organized unit, or are these independent of each other?
Almost all the arrests are on their own and independent of each other. Again, these were Livingston County Drug Task Force arrests where known targets were identified, and then we made efforts to have them apprehended.
So none of them were connected to one another in terms of selling or buying from one another at all?
I can't answer that at this time.
Is there somebody who could kind of quantify what we're seeing on the table here? Step on up.
We can utilize Special Agent Curran from the DEA. He'll go through it. There's not a piece of narcotics that you're not going to see here today that were seized. A number of are there, and clearly the variety that's sold is endless, but I'm sure Tim can speak on it.
Aside from that, these are more than just user quantities here. You're seeing that some of the weights here are looks to be more than ounce quantities. So that would tell us.
Yeah, because others are getting away from the.
I'm just looking at it myself.
I understand.
But because they're more than user quantities, they're able to be redistributed. So at that point, we would call that person, that violator, you know, supplier.
Do you know how much cash is there? We didn't want to turn anything over and look.
I don't know the approximate amount. I think it's somewhere in the ballpark of $4,000.
And again, how you found them, you mentioned undercover buys, just kind of go through kind of.
Well, I'm not at the liberty to discuss the investigation.
He had mentioned undercover buys, I just didn't know what else you think there? Just
Well, they're controlled buys, that's what we call them.
Okay.
And sometimes, in some cases, hypothetically, we may use an undercover. And again, I don't want to discuss the investigation.
Can you, in general terms, though, talk about what it takes to put together some kind of a thing like this? This is the result, but obviously there's a lot of legwork that went into before today.
Absolutely. You know, you can see the spirit of cooperation that's existing with this new task force, and this is quite the accomplishment for a task force like this in its infancy stages. So it's, you know, something to be reckoned with, but more importantly, the message is going to be sent out there that you deal drugs around here, and you're going to get arrested, and hopefully you're going to go to jail.
Undersheriff Sapney, in your time here, have you seen this many alleged drug dealers arrested at one point in a sweep?
I don't think we want to look at how many we're bringing in on a particular day. I think clearly whether we're bringing in a large drug dealer or the dealer that may be dealing smaller quantities, any amount of drugs being sold in the community is going to affect the community. And I think the message that we need to remind everybody is law enforcement facilitates the criminal justice system. We work together, but it's truly the community members that pick up the phone and give us that information. You ask how an investigation begins. It's somebody picking up the phone and making sure they're letting us know what their neighbors are doing, reporting that suspicious activity. If that information is brought to law enforcement, we're able to get together, as you see here today, and take those pieces of information and develop it into a prosecutable case. Clearly, District Attorney McCaffrey has spent a great deal of time with us over the last several months to bring these cases forward. And that's the message that we really need to get out is it's the community input that's going to bring the success. We can stand here before the community today, and you're knowing that we're working together. Now we need to make sure that the community continues to provide us with that information.
When you look at that table and what's going on there, what does that say to you, being a law enforcement guy? What does that mean?
It looks like a significant amount of narcotics and paraphernalia that we brought here today. Let me say that if we brought everything down, if Sergeant Zay, who's been working tirelessly in the evidence prosecution today, if he brought that together, we'd have all these tables full. So we're trying to bring you a snapshot of what was seized today. We're not seizing kilos of cocaine. We don't want to bring that forward, okay? But what we're doing is bringing drugs out of our community. It's felony level sales that continue to go on in Livingston County, and we're going to hold them accountable.
So is this not everything that you seized today then?
By no means is this is merely a snapshot of what was recovered today.
Jim, what's new about the task force? Why is it called the new task?
I think when we say the new task force is we've formalized what we've done. We're putting together pieces, law enforcement's work together continually. But now we've sat down through the Law Enforcement Council, all the members of Livingston County Law Enforcement Council, and we've made that commitment in a formal agreement to formalize that task force. Makes it much easier for the district attorney's office to sit down and deal with a single point of contact. Investigator Weidrich is the coordinator for the task force. That's a single point of contact. All the information is going into one location so that we can bring that coordinated effort across the county.
You knew there was one weapon on the table. Did you recover any other weapons, or was that it?
Specifically, I can't speak on that this morning.
Were there any villages or towns, we see the village chiefs here, which ones were particularly, was there more increased presence, were there more arrests out of one particular village than any others?
We may be able to quantify and say there were more arrests in a particular village today, but by no means do I want to point to that village and say, there's the bigger drug problem. We may have had the most cooperation from the citizens. Clearly, every community in Livingston County has issues with drugs and narcotics.
Are there any mugshots available for us?
As we finish up this press conference, we'll send those electronically, and you should have the majority of them. A couple of them are still being in process, so you will not have the entire list, but you'll have the majority of the mugshots available to you.
You alluded to the recent break-ins that we've had in our region lately, and sometimes after you see a sweep like this, sometimes you see a lot more break-ins. Is there a message to the community? Should they be more alert? Because sometimes, you know, there's obviously a void in the drug market now with these drugs no longer on the streets. Should people be more alert? What would you have to say to the community here in this time?
I don't think we ever want them to be more alert. We want them to be alert of their surroundings each and every day. There's high points and low points in the community as to who's being targeted, but clearly crime is never non-existent. It's always transpiring. So we got to make sure that they're always aware of their surroundings and reaching out to the officers. Thanks, and you know, if you go more casual, I bet a lot of these chiefs will speak to you. They're just not going to jump up to that podium. So. You should all be getting an email as soon as we call with those JPEGs. So we appreciate you coming out.
He went and got him a small handle. Right.